This is a quicker overview of the process Powder and I did for this collaboration on an encapsulated silicone knee appliance. First of all, we put a cling film layer over my knee and roughly traced out the shape and size that would fit well, then mapped it out the same size and shape on our sculpting tile. Mark started sculpting within our lines, keeping the edges thin and building up thickness and layers towards the center. Then I came in and I bulked it up a bit more. I also started putting in smaller balls of clay to get the texture of the pus. Mark refined these so they looked a bit more realistic and started refining and smoothing the skin around it too. I went in and added the stitch holes and pinches in the skin and used some naphtha to melt and smooth out the pussy part of the mold. Mark finished off the detailing and put some nice skin texturing in, and then we started making our mold. So to make the mold, we added this thin clay flashing, then built up walls with water-based clay and sprayed crystal clear over the sculpt, and then poured in pinky seal silicone. Once the silicone had cured, we removed the walls and cleaned off any clay left on the mold. To prepare the mold for casting, we Vaselined it and sprayed a release on, and then coated it with several airbrush layers of Super Boardy's cat plastic. I mixed up my Plasticic gelatin silicone with 100% deadener, some silicone pigments in flesh tone and white, and some red and blue flocking. We poured this into the mold, then squeegeed it, and used cotton tips around the cutting edge. I did one more layer of cat plastic on the back, and then once that was dried, powdered and removed the appliance. To pre-paint this, I used more Plasticic gelatin silicone mixed with silicone pigments and thinned with naphtha. I started with the pink layer around the edges, over the stitches and inside the wound. Then I did a skin tone layer over the top of the skin graft area. The reference image had a lot of pink in it as well, so I made sure to build it up in layers, bringing that pink back in and sponging it to make it more matte and skin textured. Next, I did my blood red meaty colour in the bottom half of the wound and up around the edges. Then I added a semi-opaque pus colour, and I made a second browner version of this and put that on top. I also added some more blood red, mixing it into it. Then I did one more yellow layer and one more brown layer, and I mixed up a new colour, a more transparent whiter pus colour, and I put this over everything. I finished by adding more drops of the brown pus. Next, I added the actual medical sutures and surgical staples that I bought on eBay for the most realistic effect. I stapled the top and bottom of the wound and sutured the insides. I placed the finished appliance on my knee to get the position correct, and then I rolled back the bottom and applied a thin layer of Pros-Aide adhesive. After it dried, I smoothed it down, and I did the same for the middle and then the top section. Next, I dissolved the edges with isopropyl alcohol, and then using a creamy Pros-Aide and a red stipple sponge, I feather disguised where that edge is. Then I put on some anti-shine, which I do several more times. Using Skin Illustrator, I first matched the skin to my skin tone, and then I started adding in blues, purples, and pinks around the wound to make it look infected. I added Fleet Street scab blood inside the wound, and then Fleet Street dark blood messily around the outside of the wound, letting it dry slightly, and then I removed most of the blood to just leave the smears and traces of blood. And to finish it, I added KY jelly over the pus to make it look wetter. This is the finished piece. I did have a bit of a play with it. I enjoyed suturing it up and then removing the sutures and staples just to be a bit gross. To remove it, first of all I find an edge, and then I get a cotton tip dipped in Super Solve Remover, and I get that underneath the prosthetic. Afterwards that, I move on to Super Solve on a cotton pad to remove the larger parts of the prosthetic, and then also use Super Solve on a cotton pad to remove any adhesive residue left on my skin. Thanks for watching. If you want more in-depth tutorials on the hows and whys of this makeup, I will link them all here once they are uploaded, and you can subscribe to my channel here for updates on when new videos are out.